Good afternoon, Salets. Good afternoon, brothers and sisters.
Good afternoon, sister.
How are you all today?
Good.
Okay, so before I dive into our weekly routine, let me share with you our adventure. So today is the last day of at the Amokyo premise. We spent half the morning packing and cleaning up the place, and then shifting everything out. So it overran a bit, so that's why we came in late. So did you all manage to have some tranquil moment, deep samadhi, or were you all like, what happened to Shifu? How come it's not here yet? Oh well. Okay, so let's get started. Today we have two variables who are with us. Would you like to share with us your name and how you got to know this group?
Good afternoon. Alright, everybody. I'm from Johor Bahru, I'm Mauritian. I've been staying in Myanmar for 8 years. I finished my master in Buddha Dhamma. So now it's like in between 1 year for me to rest. So I always come back to Malaysia once in a while. Of course, I miss Malaysian food. Because staying overseas, one thing the food challenge is, one thing the food is very difficult, and also the weather is difficult. So yeah. So this is my best Dharma sister. We start a charity and education center in Yangon. It's 45 minutes from the airport. So she's my chief nun. She's a Burmese nun. That's right. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Honorable and my brother and sister. Yes, my name is Ekavati. I came from Myanmar. Yeah, and I also finished with a degree from the Buddhist University in Myanmar. Yes, I also my friend. This one my friend Malaysian Sally. That sometimes I follow her to the Malaysia and the Singapore. And the son we also give the sharing our knowledge. Thank you very much.
What happened to your hand? Is your hand okay?
A little bit big. Yeah, accident, baby.
Is it okay?
Yes.
Good. Welcome. And how did you chance upon the group today?
By my Buddhist friend. I know her many years already, Jin. Yeah. In fact, I was working in Singapore about maybe 17 years ago. So because after that I became a nun, so I left Singapore for quite a long time. Then now quite free because finished my university. So just come and walking around, enjoy the new MRT. It's a big experience still, and I mean it's a very convenient life in Singapore now with the MRT, but it's a lot of people.
Do you enjoy the slowdown?
Slow down in Singapore. I think lifestyle in Yangon and in Myanmar is much more slow. Here is quite fast.
You didn't try out your slow MRT?
Because I remember last year I was in Singapore also, and then I think I was in the city hall where the MRT. I noticed the MRT was quite fast, and then was already in the kampung, like Myanmar considered quite kampung already. So the MRT was quite fast for me. I didn't even know how to put my leg. And then I noticed when I was in a MRT going out and people still running, they find it's not enough. The speed is not fast enough, right? Yeah, so it's a different lifestyle. But I think everybody is very fortunate to live in a very peaceful country. So that's our good karma, If you are born in Singapore as a Singaporean, yeah.
Sadhu. Welcome. Alright, let's see who else is here for the first time. The lady next to Nancy, is she here for the first time? Yes, come. Tell us your name and how you got to know about this group.
I'm Annie. brought me here today.
I see. Welcome, welcome. Okay, who else is here? Okay, I think the rest are all season parking holders. And then on the right, let's see. On the right, I think most, if not all, season parking. Ah, yes. Well, they're not exactly new, but they have been, they came maybe like once or twice, and then they disappeared. then they got married, and then they had kids, and then, so introduce yourself.
My name is Nicole. My affinity with Shifu, this group is from Bright Hill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And sometimes, because my job is a cabin crew, so sometimes when I'm not here on weekend, then really can't attend.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So sometimes I'm here, but lazy to. Yeah. Then we got married, we have kids, and
Yes.
now just cannot. Baby is 3 months old. Yeah.
Congrats.
This is my
Congrats.
husband.
Husband, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Edward. Also arbitrarily. Yeah, that's it.
Welcome, welcome. Okay, good. So, welcome back. Good to see you all. Is the baby here today? We've found someone to babysit. Okay, good. So, so we have this group cultivation once a week, every Sunday 1 p.m. And we have short puja, short meditation, and also short Dharma sharing. So last week, can you remember last week's topic? What was last week's topic? Huh?
Refuge in our lives.
Refuges in our life, yes. So what are the refuges we have gone through? We went through some of the things and the people that we have, mostly people, yeah. Starting with our mother, and then our teachers, our friends, and then later on we went through some that are a bit more specialized, yeah, like doctors, lawyers, and so on. Yeah. But we also examine how each of these groups, they may offer us some comfort and some help, yeah? But there are certain limitations. Okay? They serve different purposes in terms of giving refuge. And so then we look at the refuge in the triple gem, yeah? Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. Yeah. And then we highlighted how having the right attitude towards the triple gem, having the right expectations is important. Because otherwise, we may come to the triple gem, we may come to Buddhism, but with the wrong mindset. Yeah. And with the wrong mindset, it will give rise to, what do you call that? A kind of expectations which is not in line with reality. Yeah? If we have the wrong expectation of the triple gem, then more likely than not we'll be disappointed. Yeah? Like there are some students, if they hear that, for example, if you fall sick, yeah, what would you do? You'll see the doctor, isn't it? Yeah. Would you feel like if you fall sick, would you blame the Buddha? Like you wake up with a flu, with a headache, it's like, hey, go to the altar and look at the altar and like, hey, what are you doing? I do my part, you do your part. I bring orange juice, you cure my flu. Why do you let me fall sick? Of course, most people don't have this kind of expectations. And for the most part, if you just have flu or headache, it's pretty easy to solve, yeah? And we get by with that. The trouble or challenge comes when it is more than just a flu, when it's just more than just a headache. Yeah. But one day when you wake up, like for example, a student of mine, a couple of years back, she had a dizzy spell or something, and next thing you know, her vision started to go dark. Yeah. Within a few hours, it deteriorated very quickly until, by evening, it was just a dim image. Yeah. So she got admitted, and then found out that there was some form of viral infection or something. Fortunately, she managed to recover. So years later, just a few days ago, she told me that she got admitted again. Yeah, and her right eye was going a bit crazy. So she had to go for CT scan and MRI and stuff. Yeah. Now when you have flu and you go to see a doctor, it's pretty mild. And for the most part, while flu itself can kill, yeah, it can actually kill. And then worldwide, every year, there are a good number of people who actually die from flu. Yeah. But at the same time, most of us who are healthy and strong, we just recover from flu without even going to see the doctor. In fact, when I was young, there was no notion of going for inoculation, yeah, for flu. But these days, it's like, oh, going for the flu jab is supposed to be like common. So the question is, if you were to imagine that today you're okay, you come for SGC, tomorrow, maybe 3 days later, you wake up in the morning, and you're like, why is it still dark? Can you imagine? Yeah. If that happens, for some people, they start to have doubts. They start to feel uncertain. And who's to blame, And of course, you will feel uncertain. You start having questions like, why is this happening to us? Yeah. And I know that for some of you who have maybe gone through bouts of illnesses, or in some cases, recovering from cancer at some stage, yeah, you may have questions, you may have doubts. You may start to wonder, like, did all the oranges that we have offered all these years go to waste? Maybe it's not oranges, maybe it's that all the incense that we have burnt. Yeah. The irony is, when I heard my mom told me that there's a good number of, there's a certain number, not a good number, a certain number of venerables who actually have nose cancer. Yeah. And I wonder, like, maybe it's because they offer a lot of incense, and not all incense are good, and I don't know. So maybe it's incense, or maybe besides all this offering, yeah, what if someone, do prayers diligently every single day, water offering, incense offering, fruits offering, flowers offering, do all the reflections, boom, and then still fall sick. Yeah, wouldn't that create a bit of fear and uncertainty? Yeah. The one thing I often share with students is, you must remember that even in the Buddha's time, the Buddha himself fell sick. Yeah? Not often, yeah? But once had a headache, another time had a backache. Yeah? And how about his monks? I mean, they're not exactly sick chicken or everybody just keep coughing. But once in a while, in the suttas, it's recorded, yeah, that the monks, they fell ill due to dysentery. Yeah, basically hygiene. Yeah? Hygiene. I mean, even today, when you go to India, majority of people, first trip going there, 3 days later, diarrhea. Yeah? Closer to home, Myanmar, later we can ask Sally to share. When I first went to Myanmar, it was in 2005, yeah, after coming back from US. And that trip seems to be quite okay. Didn't really have diarrhea until the second last day. I had mild diarrhea. Second trip, really bad. The science is, you know. So in the Buddha's time, there were such cases. Monks and nuns falling sick. Yeah. And what did they do? They go to see the doctor. Yeah. In fact, we even have a rule that says that if a monk or nun is ill and do not see the doctor, it's a wrongdoing. And if after seeing the doctor you do not follow the prescription and do not take the medication, it's another wrongdoing. Yeah. So the Buddha is a very practical teacher. He don't say, you know, if the monks come to see him. Imagine if you were one of the monks or nuns or disciple and they fall sick and you go and see the Buddha. Bhante, Blessed One, Bhagawan, I'm not feeling well. You know what the Buddha will probably tell you is like, have you seen a doctor? But today there are students, there are devotees who have this wrong mindset. Yeah? About how if you become a Buddhist, if you do all your due diligence, prayers, offerings and so on, then you should not fall sick. That is not true. Yeah, that is not true. Yeah. And so today's topic, on right view. Yeah, right view. Because simply taking refuge, what are we taking refuge in? Yeah, the right view. Starting off with right view, then we basically set the path, set the direction correctly. I often share with friends, with students and individuals about how better to have right view and lesser effort than to have strong effort and wrong view. Yeah. It is like driving, you know. If you don't know the direction, you better stop where you are going, park to the side and then check your direction again. Than to just yeah. If you don't know the direction, you should not step so hard on the accelerator. Because the end result is you get to the wrong place very fast. And so always check your direction. So what is right view? There's this book called In the Buddha's Words that I've been going through with some students since last year. Today we're going to go a bit further. So this book called In the Buddha's Words. Do you know about this book? Some of you have seen this before. For those who have not seen it before, strongly encourage you to get a copy. You can approach the Buddhist library and see whether they can help to maybe order in bulk. Yeah. Or you can just go to Amazon.com, get an e-copy, or you can just order the soft copy, the soft cover, and it will be shipped to you. Yeah. So this book is very interesting because while it is edited and introduced by Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, this is very different from other Buddhist books. Yeah, because it's strictly speaking not really a book, as in like, written by somebody. Rather, it is actually translated by Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi. Yeah. So what it means is that, because it's basically an anthology, it says here anthology. Yeah, what is an anthology? An anthology is basically a selection, selection of texts from different volumes. In this case, from the Nikayas. Yeah. So instead of us having to read through the whole Nikaya, which I strongly recommend as well, there are the four main Nikayas, the Digha Nikaya, Majjhima Nikaya, Samyutta Nikaya, and Anguttara Nikaya. I just gave one set to Jin. So those who, she can't read all at once. So those who want, you can borrow from her and share. We should form a study group, so everybody read one chapter and then share. It's kind of like studying for exams last time, everybody study one chapter and then share. Now, so while we are at it, trying to read through all the Nikayas, so what Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi did was that he had been doing translations for around, I think, decades. Yeah. So with his understanding and command, and he's not doing it simply from a pure academic, although he's an academic, but he spent years in Sri Lanka. So it's not simply from a literature angle of translation. There are certain subtle nuances that needs that appreciation of the Sangha, the monastic community, and so on in the translation. So what he did is that if you look at the forward and also the table of contents, then what he did is that he come up with a framework, starting from the human condition, which is basically describing our present state. And when we say our, it's not just about human, not just about human, but in this case, the human condition focuses on human. But from this, there's some mention about other realms in some ways. Then it goes into the second chapter, which is the bringer of light. And of course, who is the bringer of light? The Buddha himself. And I'm going to just run through very briefly because when we started off last October, running through the table of contents took a few sessions because at each one I will share with them what I know about that particular sutta. So you see, approaching Dharma from the Buddha, then the Dharma, then the three kinds of happiness: present life, future life, and ultimate happiness. Then, so we have the present life, the future life, and so on. Then the different aspects of cultivation and so on. Now, the interesting thing about this text, which I haven't really come to, is this. Because it's an anthology, other than the introduction at each chapter, the main introduction at the front, the rest of the text is basically the Buddha's words, translations. So instead of him coming up to tell us, oh, what he thinks about the human condition, this is not what Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi thinks about the human condition. This is what he has translated from the Pali Canon of what the Buddha and his disciples said about the human condition. And so, for example, if we go to page, let's say 26, then you see here, old age, illness, and death. 老病死, 老病死. This is something that we are so familiar with, right? And in all the different traditions, all the different countries, we hear this teaching. And this is at the very core of the Buddha's teaching. But yet at the same time, it's not simply the Buddha's teaching, it's what we all experience. I've shared before how at Interfaith Circle, when I share this is basically the first noble truth. And when I share the first noble truth, I don't put it up as the first noble truth. I basically ask the whole audience, filled with Buddhists, Christians, Hindus, Muslims, Taoists, and people from all walks of life. And I'll ask them the question, do you want to grow, fall sick, and die? Experience the difficulties, the discomfort of all these three processes. And no one, without exception, no one wants to go through it. And yet, no one can escape it, regardless of your race, language, or religion. If I can quote the pledge. While no one wants it, we all get it. It's the one lucky draw that everybody at some point will get it. And so the interesting thing is that as much as we will say the Buddha's teaching, the Buddha was not teaching about something else that is apart from our life. It was really just, highlighting what we have been experiencing, but perhaps don't want to look at, don't want to face. Not ready to face, perhaps. So if we look at this text, there's the text itself, and then there's the citation, which is this, in this case, Samyutta Nikaya. Samyutta Nikaya has a lot of different books, and this book 3 from one of the Varga, one of the books. Yeah. So throughout the whole text, it is like this. Yeah. The subheading, the chapter, subsection, and then the sutta itself. And from the sutta, it basically brings out the teachings from the Buddha to us. And so if you look at the main text, it's all the translations, except for when we look at before that, there's the introduction. This is from Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi. Yeah. So the thing that he has done is he strings them together. Yeah. He strings the teachings of the Buddha together in a certain format. Yeah, in a certain format. Yeah. A certain flow to form up a certain narratives. Yeah. And this is also the reason why, while the bulk of the text is not written by him, I appreciate this book because for many people, when we look at the Nikayas, one common feedback is, Shifu, there are so many suttas, which one should I start with? Yeah, it's almost mind-boggling. And if you were to just read cover to cover for the different Nikayas, you may then find that, wow, either a lot of repetition, or two, it's just very overwhelming. Yeah, seems very piecemeal, like a bit here, a bit there. There's a reason why it's a bit here, a bit there. And it's simply because, as I shared before, the Buddha teach according to those who come to him. Yeah. So different people need different parts of the teaching. Yeah. He didn't give a Dharma course. Very interestingly, he never gave Dharma courses. Yeah. So today, when we look at, let's say the commentaries, yeah, it gives us a feeling of having some structure. And in a way, this is what the book do. The difference is that commentaries has added, the commentary is added text that explains what the Buddha has said. Yeah. Over here, there's minimal explanation. Yeah. Just the introduction to give you some framework, then hit right into it. Yeah. So, strongly encourage you to get a copy of this, yeah, and then explore. Today we're going to look at one of the section here. Let me try to find it. There's one section which talks about right view. Yeah, talks about right view. So let me try and find it for you. How many of you have not seen this text before while I'm looking for it? How many of you have not seen it before? So you all can try to go and look for it. Yeah. So let's see. Right view, right view. What do you all know about right view? Samadhi. Do you know what is right view?
It's the first of the Noble Eightfold Path.
Yes, it is the first of the Noble Eightfold Path, isn't it? So what is right view? Give me a second, I will just find that section. How many of you have attended some basic Buddhism course? Yeah, so what do you all learn about right view? What if one day you are in a plane and someone look at you and say, are you a Buddhist? And you say yes. And the person asks you, I heard there is something called Noble Eightfold Path. Can you explain to me? Yeah. Or the person asks you like, what is the goal of a Buddhist? And then you say, Nirvana, yeah, Nibbana, yeah. And then the person asks you, so how do you, attain that? What are you going to tell that person? Huh? What are you going to tell that person? Oh, okay. Must say correctly, SGC. Yeah. Oh, wow, today is an amazing day. We have another variable. Hello, Bante. Yes. Come and take a seat. Next thing you know, Dalai Lama is coming. Come. Take a seat. Tell us your name. This is totally unscripted. Tell us your name and how you got to know this.
Okay. Very good afternoon to all of you present here. I'm first time in Singapore. I have arrived just few days before. I'm staying at Sri Lankan Ramaya Temple, St. Michael's Road. So I was just visiting the Buddhist places in Singapore. So on the way I saw the board, this Buddhist Union, this board, and I got interested to visit this center.
Where do you mean you walk past?
I was walking towards that to visit some other temples. So I'm just exploring Singapore and Buddhist places, Buddhist centers and temples in Singapore. So I requested one lay devotee that could I visit your center, this center? So she brought me here, and eventually I have met you.
Okay,
So,
welcome. What is your name in Bante?
my name is Shumanta.
Shwanta.
If you forget, you just remember Sumatra, the island of Indonesia.
Sumanta.
Sumanta. Close to Sumatra.
Oh, Sumanta.
Yes.
Thank
you.
Welcome. So, give me a second. I wanted to share with you one passage that Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi wrote, because it outlines very interestingly a flow, a certain flow as to the approach to take, as far as right view is concerned. So just give me a second, let me just look through, and who knows, maybe a Tibetan. Maybe you can search view. I mean, next thing you know, we have some Rinpoche coming in. Yes. So how do I go back? Oops. How do I go back to the search? Okay. Okay. So, right view. We probably want to spend more than one session on right view. Yeah. What is right view? In some of the texts, it just summarizes it into that right view is basically knowing the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, and then knowing karma, the law of karma, yeah, and then accepting the 12 links of dependent origination, yeah, which is basically the core of the Buddha's teaching. So, let me see. Page 145. Let me just double check again. How come this 145 and my 145 is different? Yeah, it looks quite different. No. Because this is the soft copy version. Let me just double check. Is this page 422 here? Are there 422 pages here? I think there isn't. So this is page 145. But the 145 here and the 145 here looks a bit different. Okay, then I read this from you. Okay, so this section here is about karma. Yeah, the teaching of karma is quite rather unique to Buddhism. But if you have any Hindu friends, they also tell you that, oh, we also teach karma. Yeah. So what is the difference? But not just between Hindus and Buddhists, but Chinese also have a notion of karma, mainly from Buddhist teachings. But our Chinese angle of karma is yet a bit different also. Yeah. So what is karma? What is karma? All of you attended so many sessions. Huh? Actions. Yeah. Karma means actions. Yeah. But I think in the Theravadan school, then we say intentional action. Yeah. Correct, Ante? Correct. Today we have 4 venerables. We just need one more, and it's a formal community. Yeah, we just need one more. Waiting for one more. One of you, please quickly shave and then. Yeah. So karma. The teaching on karma rests on how there are consequences to our actions, and mainly on intentional actions. Yeah. And so then, how about, so there's this focus on the nature of the intent. Is it coupled with defilements, yeah, kilesa, or is it free of kilesa, free of defilements? Yeah? Is it filled with, driven by greed, hatred, and delusion? Or is it free of that? Yeah. I'm not so familiar with how Hindus talk about karma. Yeah. But in Hinduism, there is the notion of creation. In Buddhism, there's no such a notion. So, well, in many texts, when you talk about right view, there's no emphasis on whether there's creator God or no creator God. Yeah, but one of the implications is that there is no creator God in the world. Yeah. Recently, I talked to some Buddhists, or a family who sort of think that they are Buddhists, They're inclined towards Buddhism, but they actually, think that, well, there should be a creator. Yeah. So a show of hands, how many of you know that in Buddhism there's no creator God? How many of you are not sure? Okay, 1%, 2%, yeah, 3%, 4%, yes. So in Buddhism, there is no such a notion as of creator God. Now I'm going to play the devil's advocate and throw it back to you all. What makes you think that there's no creator God? You can quote what the Buddha taught, but you must have some basis for rejecting a creator God. Because it's one thing for me to just go through the whole text and then tell you, oh, right view is this, right view is that. Yeah, but for you to examine and to understand, why is it that case? Why is there no creator God? How many of you agree that there's no creator God? Hang on. How many of you agree that there's no creator God? Maybe we should ask all of you to sit one side, and then you all have a debate. What is you have something?
There's no creator God, but I believe there's a creator.
You believe
there's not a God. We don't worship him as a God. I believe there's a creator somewhere.
So
Actually,
where?
Dead.
Hang on. You don't know.
Yeah.
So you think that there's some creator. Creating what? Creating iPhone or what? Creating what? Creating the world?
The galaxy.
The galaxy. So one person believes that maybe don't call him God or her, or maybe not even a gender, but don't call this entity God. Does it make it any better? One day you have something to add.
So Buddhism has one theory that is called the beginninglessness.
Yes.
The theory of beginninglessness.
Yes.
And I am creating my own future with my deeds and actions. So therefore, we can say that with our own actions, with our own deeds, we are creating our own future.
Yes.
So I am the creator of my future life, not God.
Yeah.
So yes.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to do is not to give them the answer. So I don't like to give them an answer. I want to
Boost them to search the answer.
Yes. Like they leave a strong impression. And then maybe they come out with the right answer, maybe they come out with the wrong answer. Then, and if it's whether it's right or wrong, I will spend time to question them, then make them stress, and then maybe they have nose bleeding.
Qualified in searching.
Yes. It's like when you all do your masters and you must defend your thesis, Yeah. So this is what I do to them. So we have one view here, that maybe don't call it God, but she believed that there should be a creator. How many of you agree to that notion? In Chinese, it's called Ti Gong. So I have an uncle who is a very devout Buddhist, but at the end of the day, sometimes he will just say, "我師弟哦，嗰時會提供，老爺，係時叫老爺啊，拜老爺啊。拜提供跟老爺其實yeah lah, same lah. To him is same lah. So that's one stand. How about so what about those who actually subscribe to the notion that there's no creator God? Yeah. How do you then reconcile this? Is there a creator or creator God or not? Yeah. What is the basis? What is the basis? Why do you feel that there should be one?
Because I'm quite puzzled. See, you have galaxies everywhere outside.
Yeah.
Okay, and we are in one galaxy.
Yes.
Then there's black hole or whatever. This is all very scientific.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, there should be a creator, what?
Why?
Then where does all this comes from?
So how do you all defend your stand? Those who, yes.
I think we talk about this very long, but in my mind, it's who created the
Pass the mic.
who created the creator.
Who created the creator?
Who created the creator?
Yes.
If there's a creator, I mean, in my mind, if there's a creator, I'm also quite confused. So I'm just thinking, as we all speak, is that if there's a creator, then who created the creator? And if there's a creator, then who created him? And then, you know, or her, right? So, and if it's so powerful to create something so beautiful as a universe, then who created the creator who can create this universe?
Yes.
So you cannot stop about creating. So just in my mind, just understand that it's all natural, it's all nature, then I think it's easier.
Okay, so
if you think of the creator is
yeah, so this is the, let's look for an easier solution. So now we have one view that there should be a creator, and the basis is, but if nobody created, then how did it come into existence? Yeah. Then we have the second opinion, which is, well, in that case, then how about the creator? Yeah. If there's no one who created a creator, then how did it come into existence? Any other viewpoints? How about those who subscribe to the teaching that there's no creator in Buddhism, or rather in the world? Okay, just now those who raise your hand. If you're in the airplane, in a bus, taking a bus to, you know, Guangdong or something, then suddenly the auntie next to you, 你拜佛的? Then suddenly ask you, 有没有创造者? Or is there a creator? Then how? Then you, I call my 师父. How? Like? Yes.
It could be unknown because I feel they could be a creator, or they could, like just now the theory, you know, who created the creator. So if you go on this, you will not have an answer. So it becomes unknown. So the answer could be, but I don't know whether yes or no.
Oh.
So, but it becomes, does it matter to know?
So that's another angle.
So it's
Whether
important to know.
Whether you know something or not, does it matter? Is it important?
Yes.
Does it change our way of doing things or looking at this world? Yeah. So this is another angle. Yeah. So first one is there should be a creator, because otherwise how did things exist? And another angle is, well, then how about the creator itself? Yeah. And the creator can, if the creator can create something so that our world can exist, then the creator must probably need a creator also. So creator 0 created our world, then creator 1 created the creator 0, then there should be a creator 2 who created creator 1, and creator 3 to create creator 2, and so on. So there will, for everything that is created, yeah, Cn, there's always a Cn plus 1 or Cn minus 1 to create it. And this is a progression that goes infinitely, potentially. Yeah. Then there's the question of so what? Yeah, so what? It is like when you take a bus. Yeah, when you take a bus, when you board the bus, before you tap, do you ask the bus driver, do you know where this bus was manufactured? Are you not going to board the bus simply because you don't know who manufactured the bus? Do you know who invented combustion engine? How about iPhone? Actually, not Steve Jobs, you know. It's a whole team of engineers. Yeah, and for that matter, it's not those engineers. Those engineers piece together all those technology to form what you call an iPhone. Yeah, they didn't invent transistors. Yeah, transistors was way back in the Bell Labs. Yeah, and those guys didn't know that it's going to become an iPhone. And for that matter, liquid crystal displays. Yeah, the TFT. Yeah. So, but yet every day we are using it. And so that's a very interesting point. does it matter to know where it comes from? When you when you bring your kids to school, do you go and ask who built this school? You don't also, right? What matters is what you can get out of the school, the whole process. So there are all these three angles. Any fourth angle or something to say about this? Or is there anybody else? So far, the last two stand is supporting or either supporting, or rather the last two negates the question of creator God. Yeah, the very last one basically dismisses it as inadmissible. This question is probably irrelevant, but it doesn't directly answer it. It basically says, does it matter? The previous one asked, well, there's no end to it because you cannot just assume that there's a creator. How about the creator's creator? Yeah. Is there anybody else who would like to support the original argument? Yes, pass the mic.
I will support the original.
And what what tool will you have to support this argument?
I don't have tools, but I believe it's our upbringing. Since young, my mother, my grandmother, they be doing got Qigong, got this, got that, So that's why I want to learn
So
more.
this is what there's a term for it also, it's called hearsay.
Yes. So I want to learn
So for that, there's one particular sutta called the Kalama Sutta from Anguttara Nikaya, book 365. So let's take a look. So the Kalama Sutta. So, can you see? Yeah, so in this, I'm not going to go through the whole sutta, but just to read to you some part of it. The background is that the Buddha was at this place called Kesaputta, and there was this clan of people called the Kalama. Yeah? And so the interesting thing is that if you look at the start of the sutta, they basically heard that there's this ascetic Gautama who have arrived in town. And there's this report that goes by about him that says that, hey, this ascetic Gautama, he is knowledgeable, he is wise, he's enlightened, he is the knower of the world, and so on and so forth. He's teacher of gods and men. Yeah. So the recitation, in the Theravadan tradition, when we recite Buddha Vandana, Iti Piso Bhagava Araham Bhante. Yeah, so those verses, if you can follow this part here, a good report about that Master Gautama has been circulating thus: that Blessed One is an Arahant, perfectly enlightened one, accomplished in true knowledge and conduct, fortunate, knower of the world, unsurpassed, leader of persons to be tamed, teacher of devas and humans. Devas is basically gods. The enlightened one, the blessed one, having realized with his own direct knowledge this world, with its devas, Mara and Brahma, this population, with its ascetics and Brahmins, with its devas and humans, he makes it known to others. He teaches a Dharma that is good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. With the right meaning and expression, he reveals a spiritual life that is perfectly complete and purified. Now, it is good to see such arhants. Yeah. So, in the Buddha's time, when he go from town to town, city to city, what really happens is not like now, like now, if let's say some renowned teacher comes, well, there'll be poster, there'll be Facebook, Twitter, and then there'll be a big fanfare in the airport, and then, wow, everybody will flock there and listen. In the Buddha's time, somewhat similar but quite different. All they have is a report saying that the Buddha, quite a good teacher, supposed to have accomplished something, but they don't simply assume it's so. But based on that report, they may say, hey, let's go and check him out. And that's basically what you have said in modern terms. Let's check him out. Yeah? And so they went to see him, and they asked him and told him that there are so many different views that is being purported by the different teachers. And all of them say that they are correct and the rest is wrong. Yeah? What do you have to say? Yeah? What does Buddha have to say? And so the Buddha addressed them saying, it is fitting for you to be perplexed, O Kalamas. It is fitting for you to be in doubt. Doubt has arisen in you about a perplexing matter. Come, Kalamas. And this is in address to the question, or rather the support, because we have been brought up this way. And it's very common and normal. And dare I say so, because most of us are not first generation Buddhists. Most of us are accepting Buddhist teaching, mostly because my mother says so. And if you ask your mother, the mother say, don't ask so much. Yeah. Most of our mothers would not be explaining, they'll be saying, don't ask so much. Shh. Cannot ask. Yeah? Chinese tradition, not Buddhist tradition. Buddhist tradition advises, encourages us to ask. So the Buddha said, do not go by oral tradition, by lineage of teaching, by hearsay. Yeah? Which is exactly not so much about you, but about how most of us receive our ideas by custom, yeah? By word of mouth, passed down from our parents, our grandparents, and so on. The Buddha says this is not a good enough source or basis to say it is true or not true, to say whether this is fruitful for us or not fruitful for us. Then you shouldn't just rely on someone saying, then okay, you know. What else? By a collection of texts. Because this text says so. Notice that right at the start I said, oh, this is from the Nikayas. Yeah? So unwittingly, we have a bit of that already. Because it's from the Nikayas, so it must be true. Oh, Chala, even Nikayas, we have to question. But actually, in some ways, the Buddha do you know, as we go through, he don't encourage us just to say, because the Buddha says so, so it must be correct. And in fact, this morning, we had this discussion, yeah, about faith, yeah, faith and the Buddha's teaching. We don't simply say, because the Buddha says so, so it must be right. Yeah? Although there are certain things we cannot prove yet, we say, okay, I'll take his word for now, but I'm going to try to verify it. And that is the difference. Yeah, that is the difference. So, not to go by a collection of texts by logic, not even by logic, you know. Yeah. Around the same time as the Buddha, somewhere further up north, in ancient Greece, yeah, thinkers like Plato and later on Aristotle and so on, they came to a point where they value logic and reasoning so strongly that they say, if, for example, Bhante, today we come out with some compelling argument and say that the sun don't rise from the west, don't rise from the east. Okay? In ancient Greece, if you come out with a statement that has compelling logic and reason, that prove that the sun actually don't rise from the east, and someone comes and tell you, well, the sun just rose from the east, then you know what they did? They say, well, the sun is wrong. At some point in ancient Greece, their reasoning and logic reached this point, until someone came along and said, hey, wait a minute, but the sun is rising from the east. If that is the case, then your logic is wrong. And that is the cornerstone, yeah? That is the cornerstone of modern scientific approach, where you come up with a hypothesis, and then you measure it against empirical evidence. And if empirical evidence is different from your hypothesis, empirical evidence will always supersede your Pay attention, pay attention. Very crucial part. All of you, or I know in your mind, that if empirical evidence is different from your hypothesis, then empirical evidence will always supersede. And you must go and re-examine your hypothesis. Retweak it, re-examine it, change it to fit the observed phenomena. Of course, you don't do it one observation. Yeah. Interestingly, that's what the Buddha did way before the Western world came out of this full process. The Buddha don't simply go around telling us, oh, this is how it is. But he asked the question, is form, is rupa permanent or impermanent? Is it permanent or impermanent? Ask you to go and examine for yourself. Ask you to go and see for yourself. AE Pasigo. So let's just go through this. By inferential reasoning, another form of logic, to infer. If you see smoke, there should be fire. But today we know there's smoke machine. So just because you see smoke doesn't mean there's fire. By reason, cogitation, a lot of deep thinking, reflection. By the acceptance of a view after pondering it, or after thinking, then because you have thought of it, then it should be correct. By the seeming competence of the speaker. Wow, speak very well, very compelling, or maybe got more power. I'm not amor, but let's say there's an amor, or maybe tengdang use tengdang, then wow, must be very, not simply because the speaker can speak well. But you think about it, even today, this happens, isn't it? When you hear a speaker who...
The personal charisma of the speaker.
The charisma of the speaker.
Convincing speech.
Convincing speech. Like how it is now. Or because you think that ascetic is our teacher. Or because Sifu said so. No. Whether it's Sifu or the Buddha or Bante or Sayale, anyone. Don't simply accept it because of that. But I want to highlight something here. Once you have proven to a certain extent and you have accepted it, next week when you come back to SGC, don't reopen the case. You should not every single week reopen and start from scratch again. That is not the scientific approach as well, isn't it? Unless you have new evidence to question existing conclusion. Otherwise, you shouldn't every week come back and say, hey, are you sure it's impermanent? Then, if your approach is always doubting, where something that's really proven beyond doubt, and you still go and question it, then you're reinventing the wheel every single week, or every single day. Then you never progress. You never progress. There was once, when I was having a group discussion, I think like a group cultivation, and there were students from NUS. And then there was one student, not joking, but there was a student who was questioning left, right, center, and I was like, oh, good. But at some point, I realized that he was questioning with no limitations or scope. He was even questioning like, why is the Four Noble Truth the way it is? In a way, where you are questioning the very fundamentals of our own experience. So then I asked him, I said, do you apply the same level of questioning to your everyday life? Because his thinking is that is the scientific approach. But scientific approach is not about questioning every single thing baselessly and groundlessly as well. There are certain accepted principles, as I said, unless there are new evidence that questions it, then you question. Otherwise, scientists cannot do new discovery because you have to keep, did we discover Pythagoras' theorem every single day? Crazy, isn't it? So I asked him the simple question which I'm going to ask you today. Before we wrap up, and then next week, we'll go into some text to really go into the meat of what right views is. Today is just about the attitude. How many of you stay in a high-rise building? Raise your hand. You do, right? If you ever encounter someone who approached Buddhism in this way, why is it like that? Why is it like that? And keep on questioning, you ask the person, do you stay in a high-rise building? And more likely than not, 80–90% of Singaporeans all stay in high-rise. Then you ask them, do you know for a fact, or do you, when you go back home, do you ever have the fear that the building will collapse? There's a remote chance you may be talking to someone who is paranoid. Other than that, the person should answer no. If the person answers no, then you can ask the person, why not? And the person will probably like, should I? The question is, most of us stay in high-rise buildings. But do we know that the building is not going to collapse? You don't, right? So it could collapse, isn't it? So why are you not afraid that it will collapse? Oh, jialat. Today after class, all of them when they go back, and tonight, cannot fall asleep. But think about it. It's true, isn't it? How do you know? You don't know. Or maybe you can say, well, Shifu, this is Singapore, right? As long as people are staying inside TOP, then someone has certified. Agreed? There's some principal engineer who signed on the dotted line. If it collapses, it's on him. No, it's not on him, it's on you because you're inside the building. After it's on you, then it's on him. Or her for that matter. But we don't know, isn't it? Even though he signed on the dotted line, we don't know for sure that it's not going to collapse. Because how many of us, I asked that student that day, do you study civil and structural engineering? No. And it turned out that that whole class, if I don't recall wrongly, none of them studied. I didn't study civil and structural engineering, but I studied enough engineering and physics to know something about stress and load. Yeah? And I have enough friends who are in civil and structural engineering to know that, yeah, it's not a trivial matter. Just because you have engineering degree, you cannot certify it as well, you know. You need to go through years of training. And yet, the rest of us, blissfully sleeping every night, we assume because someone who has been trained did that job. What if that day that QS, is it QS who do the survey? Somebody lah. They go around, boom, you know, to test, you know, the structural strength and everything. They go around, boom here, boom there, yeah. And based on that, what if that day when he boom, and then he was texting the wife about the kid, and then boom, cannot. Then how? You don't know because you were not there to verify. But we don't do that because we can't function that way. We trust, we assume that those guys who are professionals did their job. Yeah. And that comes to the question of, so what? In this case, if the guy didn't do a job, we are in trouble. But because besides the building, there are too many things. How do you know that the bus is serviced? When you take the plane, how do you know it's serviced properly? You really don't know. And the thing is, you can't afford to go and check every single thing. And we don't. Perhaps we should, but we don't. So the point is, if you don't do this for every single thing, why is it that when you come to Buddhism, hey, no, you must explain. When in fact, we don't discourage people from asking, but the checking should be done by ourselves, not asking somebody else to check for us or prove to us. And so the approach of questioning and asking questions is okay, but to know the limitations, to know what is the scope, and when to say, okay, I've asked sufficiently, this should suffice for me now. Proceeding forward, then I'll verify more. Okay? So, right view. Today we touched a bit on the attitude. Yeah? Our attitude towards the triple gem, towards the teaching, our approach, our angle. While we do not accept the whole teachings on blind faith, we don't simply question it on blind skepticism as well. Yeah? There's got to be a certain baseline, a certain starting ground. And this is where we start off to examine what the Buddha said about right view. Okay? We haven't concluded on the Creator. I want you all to maybe do an exercise. Go back and search Creator. Yeah? What is a Creator? Well, next week, how the class gone? After searching, convinced that there's a Creator. Well, in Buddhism, so be it, you know, if just one search and then you're gone. Yeah. But I hope to entice you all, to invite you all, to provoke you all, to think, to question, to ask. Yeah. It's okay to have different views, but don't stop at that. Yeah. And even if your view happen to be aligned with what the Buddha taught, don't just be content to say, yeah, okay, same. But to question and ask, why is it the same? What is the basis for me to agree? Because if you do that, then your conviction is not simply based on blind faith. It's based on your understanding. And with that understanding, if one day you take a bus to Malacca, or take a plane to Japan or something, and someone asks you, hey, you Buddhist? Then you're like, sure, yeah, what's up? You'll be like, no lah. And if the person asks you, so can you tell me about right view? You'll be like, sure. Can I have a cup of coffee, please? And we're going to have a long conversation. Put our palms together. 愿消三障诸烦恼，
愿消三障诸烦恼，
愿得智慧真明了，
愿得智慧真明了，
不愿罪障悉消除，
不愿罪障悉消除，
世世常行菩萨道。
世世常行菩萨道。
阿弥陀佛，
阿弥陀佛。
起立。